I am 38 years old. I am married. I have 2 children. From the outside, my life looks calm, even happy. The kind of life people point to and say, "You're lucky." And in many ways, I am. But there is one sentence I heard years ago that never left me. Didn't scream. Didn't follow me every day. It simply stayed there, quiet and patient, resting somewhere deep in my chest, waiting. I learned that some words don't hurt right away. They wait until you finally feel strong enough to notice them. And one day, without warning, that sentence came back louder than ever. If you've ever had a past you tried to bury, if you've ever loved someone who still had the power to wound you, if you've ever smiled on the outside while carrying questions you never asked out loud, then maybe this story will feel familiar. Because the truth is, I didn't lose my peace suddenly. There was no explosion. No single moment that changed everything. It cracked slowly, quietly, right where my mother's shadow still reached me. My name doesn't matter as much as my life does. Because this isn't just my story. It belongs to anyone who learned how to survive by staying silent. I wake up every morning before the kids. The house is still dark, still holding its breath. I make coffee. I stand by the window and watch the street wake up with me. Cars pass. Lights turn on. People begin lives I will never know. My husband usually comes up behind me, still half asleep, and kisses my shoulder. It's a small thing, but it grounds me. He always asks the same question, his voice low and gentle. "Did you sleep okay?" And most days I say yes. Not because everything is perfect, but because this life, this moment, is real and steady. He is a good man. Supportive. Present. Kind in ways that don't ask for praise. He doesn't try to fix me. He listens. When I doubt myself, he reminds me who I am. Not who I should be. Not who others expect me to be. Just who I already am. When I feel tired, he steps in without being asked. Not out of duty, but out of care. We built this life together. Slowly. Honestly. Our children laugh easily. Our home feels warm. There is no shouting. No fear. And yet, there is one place in my heart that never learned how to rest. My mother. People assume distance means hatred. Doesn't. Distance is sometimes survival. Before I go on, I want to pause for just a moment. If these words are already touching something inside you, feel free to like the video and subscribe. And if you're comfortable, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. We're not alone here. Sometimes simply being heard makes a difference. I don't talk about her much. Not because I don't remember, but because remembering costs too much. My siblings still see her. They still gather on holidays. They still say things like, "She did her best." Maybe she did. But her best broke something in me that took years to name. The day everything shifted again started like any other. I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed. Family group chat notification. Photo. My mother smiling. My brother and sister beside her. And one message underneath. "She's getting older. We should fix this." My hands went cold. Because they didn't know what I knew. Or maybe they knew and chose to forget. And that's when I realized something painful. The story I ran from was about to be told. Without my voice. I was 23 when it happened, and back then I still believed family meant protection. I had just finished university and moved back home for a short time. I told myself it would be temporary. I told myself I was strong enough now. My mother welcomed me with a smile that looked warm to everyone else. But to me, it felt measured, like she was counting something I couldn't see. I ignored that feeling. I always did. At that time, my younger sister was engaged. The house was full of plans, voices, opinions. My mother controlled everything. The dates, the guests, even the colors of the flowers. I stayed quiet. Helped when asked. I tried not to take up space. That was how I learned to survive with her. One evening, a gold bracelet went missing. It was old, valuable, something my mother loved more than most people. The house froze. Drawers were opened. Voices got sharper. And then my mother looked at me. She didn't accuse me directly. She didn't need to. She just said, "Only one person was home today." I laughed at first. Thought it was a joke. My brother avoided my eyes. My sister stayed silent. The room felt smaller. My mother repeated it again, slower this time. She said maybe I needed money. She said maybe I was desperate. She said it with a calm voice, like she was stating a fact, not destroying her daughter. I remember trying to speak. I remember my throat closing. I remember saying, "Why would you think that?" And she answered, "Because I know you." That was the moment something cracked. The next day my aunt called. Then another relative. The story had already traveled. I was no longer a daughter. I was a problem. Shame. Someone to be watched. My siblings didn't defend me. Later they said they didn't want to make things worse. But it was already worse. Much worse. The bracelet was found 2 weeks later. In my sister's bag. She cried. She said it was a mistake. My mother said nothing. No apology. No explanation. Just silence, as if the damage didn't count once the truth appeared. But something else disappeared that day. My trust. I left the house quietly. I didn't fight. I didn't scream. I just packed my things and went. And no one stopped me. Years later, when I built my own family, I promised myself one thing. My children would never have to prove their innocence to feel loved. And yet, that family message on my phone told me the past was not done with me. Because lies don't die when the truth appears. They just learn how to wait. After I left that house, no one chased me. That hurt more than the accusation itself. Weeks passed, then months. My mother never called to say she was wrong. She called once to ask when I would bring the rest of my things. Her voice was flat, like we were talking about furniture, not a broken bond. That was when I understood something clearly for the first time. Her silence was not confusion. It was a choice. My siblings handled it differently. My brother tried to stay neutral. He said things like, "You know how Mom is," as if that explained everything. My sister avoided me completely. She had just been forgiven for something that almost destroyed me, and I think guilt was too heavy for her to carry. Neutrality and avoidance became their way of surviving her, but for me, it felt like abandonment. Years later I met my husband. On our third date, I told him the truth about my family. I didn't want secrets to grow between us. I expected discomfort. Instead, he listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to fix it. When I finished, he said, "That shouldn't have happened to you." No one had ever said that so simply. I knew then I was safe with him. When we had children, my mother suddenly remembered I existed. She wanted pictures, dates, holidays. She spoke as if time had erased everything. I stayed polite but distant. My husband supported me without question. He never pushed me to forgive. He never said, "But she's your mother." He understood that love without accountability is not love at all. Then last year my brother called. His voice was tired. He said our mother was not well. He said she talked about me often now. He said she wanted to clear the air. I felt my chest tighten. Clearing the air meant rewriting the past. It meant asking me to soften something that almost broke me. I said I needed time. That night I watched my children sleep. Their faces were peaceful, unaware of old family wounds. I promised myself again that I would protect that peace. But part of me wondered if avoiding my mother had turned me into the villain of her story. I wondered what she was telling people now. A week later I found out. Cousin messaged me. She said my mother told the family I left because I was ashamed. That I couldn't face them after what I did. I read the message twice, then a third time. The lie had evolved. It was no longer just about a bracelet. It was about my character. That was the moment I realized distance had not ended the damage. It had just changed its shape. The invitation came on a quiet afternoon. A simple message from my brother. He said there would be a small family gathering for our mother's birthday. Nothing big. Just close relatives. He said it would mean a lot to her if I came. I stared at the screen for a long time. My first instinct was no. My second was fear. And then there was a third feeling, quieter but stronger. I was tired of being talked about in rooms I wasn't in. I told my husband about the message that evening. He listened carefully like he always does. When I finished, he said he would support whatever choice I made. He reminded me that going didn't mean agreeing with her version of the past. It only meant I was strong enough to face it. That night I didn't sleep much. Memories kept rising without permission. I decided to go. Not for her. For myself. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had grown. The moment I walked in, conversations paused. Smiles appeared late, like they had to be found first. My mother hugged me tightly, a little too tightly. She whispered, "It's good you're here," as if I had been lost, not pushed away. Dinner was polite at first. Safe topics. Children. Work. Weather. Then my mother cleared her throat. She said families make mistakes. She said misunderstandings happen. She said forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. She never said the word sorry. Instead, she looked at me while saying, "We all remember things differently." The room went quiet. I felt my hands shaking under the table, but my voice stayed calm. I said I remembered being accused of something I didn't do. I said I remembered no one standing up for me. I said the truth was known, but the damage was never repaired. My sister started crying. My brother stared at his plate. My mother sighed and said, "Why bring up old pain?" That question broke something open inside me. I stood up. My legs felt weak, but my words didn't. I said old pain doesn't disappear just because we stop naming it. I said love without truth is not peace, it's control. For the first time in my life, I didn't soften my voice for her comfort. Then something unexpected happened. My aunt spoke. She said she remembered the bracelet being found. She said she always felt something was wrong. Another relative nodded. The room shifted. My mother's face changed. Not anger. Not sadness. Fear. She had lost control of the story. I left shortly after. I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. But lighter. In the car, my husband held my hand and said, "I'm proud of you." And for the first time I believed I had done the right thing. After the gathering, I didn't hear from my mother for weeks. The silence felt familiar, but this time it was different. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't sharp. Felt like distance finally doing its job. I focused on my children, on my home, on small routines that made life steady again. I thought maybe that night had closed something. I was wrong. It started with a phone call from my sister. Her voice was tense, defensive before I even said hello. She told me our mother was hurt. She said I had embarrassed her. She said people were talking. I asked her what exactly was being said. There was a pause. Then she admitted our mother told the family I had attacked her emotionally. That I had exaggerated the past. That I had always been sensitive, difficult, unstable. Hearing that word again, unstable, felt like being 23 all over. My brother sent a message later that day. He said maybe I should apologize to keep the peace. That sentence stayed with me longer than it should have. Whose peace? Mine had cost too much already. That night, I cried in the bathroom so my children wouldn't hear. My husband sat on the floor outside the door, talking softly through the wood, reminding me I wasn't crazy, reminding me of who I was. He said something that changed everything. He said, "If the truth needs your silence to survive, it's not the truth." Few days later, something unexpected happened again. My aunt called me directly. She said more relatives were questioning my mother now. She said my calm that night had made people listen. The story was no longer one-sided. My mother knew it. And she was angry. She sent me a message. Long, emotional. Carefully written. She said she had sacrificed everything for us. She said I owed her loyalty. She said family problems should stay inside the family. She never denied what she did. She just justified it. I didn't reply. For the first time in my life, I chose silence without guilt. That choice changed my relationship with my siblings. My sister pulled away completely. My brother stayed distant, unsure where to stand. Hurt. But I realized something important. I could not keep breaking myself to hold everyone together. And in that space, something new began to grow. My children watched me more closely than I realized. One day, my daughter asked why I didn't visit Grandma. I told her the truth, gently. I said sometimes adults make mistakes and don't fix them. I said it's okay to love someone and still keep yourself safe. She nodded like it made sense. That was when I knew I was doing something right. For most of my life, the hardest part was not what happened. It was doubting myself afterward. I questioned my memories in quiet moments. I replayed conversations in my head, wondering if I had misunderstood, exaggerated, imagined. I asked myself why my mother would do something like that to her own daughter. And every time I reached that question, I stopped, because the answer was too painful. Then Lena contacted me. She wasn't someone I spoke to often. She had stayed with our family many years ago, during a complicated time, and then life moved on. Her message was careful, almost hesitant. She said she had followed the situation from a distance and felt it was time to tell me what she knew. I felt uneasy reading it, but also strangely calm, like a door I had been afraid of was finally opening on its own. We met during the day in a public place. She didn't want anyone to recognize her. That detail alone told me how serious this was. She looked older than I remembered, but her eyes carried the same quiet awareness. When she started talking, she didn't dramatize anything. She spoke slowly, clearly, like she had practiced the words many times in her head. She told me she had been in the house the day the bracelet disappeared. She remembered the tension. She remembered my mother's frustration with my sister, who had been careless and distracted, as she often was back then. Lena said she saw my mother take the bracelet, not to steal it, but to hide it. She said my mother wanted to scare my sister into being more responsible. But then I came home, and everything changed. Suspicion moved quickly, and once it landed on me, my mother didn't stop it. According to Lena, my mother hesitated only for a moment. Then she let it happen. Because in her mind, I was the one who could endure it. I was independent, capable, already emotionally distant. Hurting me required no explanation. Protecting my sister required control. Lena said when the bracelet was later found in my sister's bag, my mother panicked. Admitting the truth would have exposed the manipulation. It would have raised questions she couldn't control. So she chose silence. And silence, over time, became an accusation that followed me wherever I went. Listening to Lena, I felt something unfamiliar. Not rage. Not shock. Relief. Relief that my memory had been honest. I drove home afterward without turning on the radio. I needed the quiet. Every red light felt longer than usual. I realized how many years I had spent shrinking myself just to survive the doubt planted in me. How often I had tried to be understanding instead of being truthful. How often I had accepted emotional pain as the price of family. When I told my husband, he didn't interrupt me. He didn't rush to comfort me. He let me speak until there was nothing left to say. Then he told me something simple but life-changing. He said, "Your strength was used against you. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." A few days later, my mother began calling. Her messages were no longer calm or passive. They were sharp, defensive, angry. She accused me of ruining her image, of poisoning the family, of betraying her trust. She didn't ask what I knew. She didn't ask how I felt. Her fear spoke louder than her words. For the first time, I read her messages without feeling pulled backward into childhood. I wasn't trying to explain myself. I wasn't trying to fix her emotions. I wasn't trying to be understood. I replied once. I told her I knew the truth. I told her I would no longer carry her choices in silence. I told her that any relationship in the future would require honesty and responsibility, not denial. She never answered. But the effect was immediate. Family conversations shifted. People became careful with their words. Some reached out quietly. Others stayed silent. My mother lost something she had always relied on, unquestioned authority. And I learned something I wish I had known earlier. The truth does not need to shout. It only needs permission to exist. Home, nothing fell apart. My children felt safe. My marriage felt solid. Life continued, not because I ignored the pain, but because I stopped carrying what was never mine to begin with. That was the moment I stopped doubting myself. And that changed everything. After I sent that message to my mother, I thought the hardest part was over. I was wrong. The truth does not end pain immediately. Sometimes it rearranges it. Sometimes it asks you to choose what you are willing to lose in order to keep yourself. My siblings were the next storm. My brother asked to meet. Just the two of us. We sat across from each other in a quiet place. The kind where people whisper even when there is nothing to hide. He looked tired, older than his age. He said the family was falling apart. He said our mother was not sleeping. He said everyone was confused. Then he looked at me and said, "Can't you just let this go?" That sentence hurt more than I expected. I asked him a simple question. I asked him if he would have told me to let it go if the accusation had stayed on him instead. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, he said it wasn't the same. He said I was stronger. I said strength should not be a reason to be sacrificed. He told me I was forcing people to choose sides. I told him I never asked anyone to choose me. I only asked them to stop choosing lies. We left that meeting without resolution. Something between us shifted permanently. Not dramatically, quietly, like a door closing without a sound. My sister didn't ask to meet. She sent messages instead. Long ones. Emotional ones. She said she felt attacked. She said I was rewriting the past to make myself look better. She said our mother had made mistakes, but so had I. I read every word carefully. I noticed something important. She never denied what happened. She just didn't want to face what it meant. I replied once. I told her I loved her. I told her I did not blame her for what happened years ago. But I told her I would no longer protect a story that erased my pain. I told her that pretending everything was fine had cost me too much already. She blocked me after that. Losing my siblings hurt in a different way than losing my mother. With my mother there was history, fear, control. With my siblings there was shared childhood, shared memories, shared survival. I grieved them quietly. I grieved the version of us that could have existed if honesty had come earlier. There were days I questioned myself again. Late nights when the house was quiet and doubts tried to return. Was I too firm? Was I too honest? Did I destroy something that could have been repaired? And every time those questions came, I looked at my children. I watched how they spoke freely, how they trusted my reactions, how they never flinched when they made mistakes. I realized something very clear. I was building the kind of home I never had to heal from. What I understand now is this. Peace does not arrive all at once. It doesn't come with a clear ending or a dramatic resolution. It arrives quietly, almost unnoticed, when you stop abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable. For a long time I thought healing meant forgetting. I thought it meant one final conversation, one apology, one moment where everything would finally make sense. But that moment never came. And eventually I realized it didn't need to. Healing for me wasn't about erasing the past. It was about no longer living inside it. There was no single day when I woke up and felt completely free. There were good days and heavy ones. There were mornings when the past felt far away, and nights when it sat quietly beside me. But over time something shifted. The memories lost their sharp edges. The guilt softened. The need to explain myself slowly disappeared. I stopped asking why things happened the way they did and started asking a different question. How do I want to live now? I learned that you can love people deeply and still choose distance. That grief doesn't only come from death. Sometimes it comes from accepting that the relationship you hoped for will never exist. I learned that walking away doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like silence, like unanswered messages, like choosing not to engage anymore. And that doesn't make you cruel. It makes you honest. For most of my life I believed strength meant endurance. It meant staying quiet, staying polite, staying available. It meant carrying emotional weight without complaint and calling it loyalty. I thought being a good daughter meant ignoring my own discomfort. I thought being a good person meant never making anyone else uncomfortable, even if it slowly erased me. But that version of strength nearly broke me. Real strength, I've learned, looks very different. It looks like choosing truth over tradition. Choosing peace over performance. Choosing your children's emotional safety over someone else's expectations. It looks like saying, "This hurts me," and letting that truth matter. It looks like accepting that not everyone will understand your boundaries, and choosing them anyway. There are still moments when the past whispers. Certain smells, certain dates, certain conversations can bring it back without warning. I don't fight those moments anymore. I let them pass through me. I acknowledge them without letting them decide who I am today. Loss doesn't disappear just because you choose peace. Simply changes its weight. And with time, you learn how to carry it without letting it define you. I am not angry anymore. I am not bitter. I am not waiting for anything to change. I am simply done carrying what was never mine to hold. The responsibility for other people's emotions. The role of mediator. The silent agreement to absorb discomfort so others could feel comfortable. That chapter closed the moment I chose myself without apology. What surprised me most was how much space appeared in my life once I stopped fighting old battles. My mind felt quieter. My body felt lighter. I laughed without tension. I slept without replaying conversations in my head. I became more present, not just with my children and my husband, but with myself. I started noticing small joys again. Morning light through the window. Shared jokes at the dinner table. The sound of my children laughing without fear of being corrected or dismissed. And watching my children grow in that environment taught me something powerful. They speak freely. They come to me with their worries and their mistakes. They trust that their feelings will be taken seriously. And one day I realized I was giving them something I never had growing up. Emotional safety. Not perfection. Not control. Just space. Space to exist, to feel, to be heard. That realization mattered to me more than any apology ever could. If you're listening to this and feel a tightness in your chest, if parts of this story felt uncomfortably familiar, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not too sensitive. You are not difficult. You are not selfish for needing space. You are allowed to remember things accurately, even if others don't like your version of the story. You are allowed to set boundaries without explaining them over and over again. You are allowed to build a peaceful life, even if the people you came from don't approve. You don't owe anyone access to your life if it costs you your peace. You don't have to stay small to keep others comfortable. You don't need permission to choose yourself. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop explaining and start living. Sometimes courage isn't loud or confrontational. Sometimes it's quiet. It's choosing yourself in moments where disappearing would be easier. I didn't lose my family. I didn't fail anyone. I didn't break anything that was whole. I simply stopped disappearing. And in doing so, I found something I had been missing my entire life. Clarity, stability, and self-respect. Not a perfect life, but an honest one. Today, I wake up next to a man who respects me. I raise children who feel safe. I live in a home where I am not afraid of being misunderstood. There is no constant tension, no emotional negotiation, no need to perform. And that is enough. More than enough. I no longer tell this story to justify my choices. I tell it because I know someone listening has been blamed for something they didn't do. Because someone has been called selfish for telling the truth. Because someone has been asked to carry the weight of a family's silence. If that person is you, I want you to know you are not alone. You never were. Before we end, I want to say this gently. If this story touched something inside you, I'd really appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribe to the channel. Truly helps more than you might think. And if you feel comfortable, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Where are you watching from, or what part of this story stayed with you the most? Sometimes sharing even a small thought reminds us that we're not alone in these experiences. And sometimes, hearing someone else speak the truth gives us permission to speak our own. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for choosing honesty, even when it's hard.